Thank you. All righty, well, good afternoon, everybody. This is the Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit Executive Committee meeting for January 21st, 2022. And I am just going to quickly take roll call for our executive committee. So Supervisor Stork.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Lusk.
Present.
Tom Bishadny.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Monica Bachman.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. John Lynch.
Present.
Miss Barbara Byron.
Present.
Thank you. And we do not, in assistance, we do not have Jennifer Mitchell from DRPT, and we might have Chairman McKay join us in a bit, and we can acknowledge him when he gets online. So Tom, do you want to open up with some comments?
In the interest of time, Vanessa, I'm just going to let you roll.
All righty. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop my video real quickly because I do see myself kind of in and out here. So let's go to the second slide and just give you where we are and a quick little update on what we're going to talk about here on the agenda. So we'll talk a little bit about the Environmental Policy Act, or our environmental document, sorry, give you an update on our cost estimate, the request to enter engineering and what that means, right-of-way acquisition, public involvement, update on the turn lane analysis, and then we'll end with some station design and look at a 12-month outlook for the project. Next slide. So environmental status, FTA, Federal Transit Administration, did sign our categorical exclusion on January 7th of this year. That was one of the major milestones that we had to complete to finish or complete up our project development phase of the project. This really what it does is it allows us to start a right-of-way acquisition. It also allows Fort Belvoir to develop a record of decision, or I'm sorry, record of consideration, or a REC, if you hear us say that of term sometimes. And with that, I would say, you know, as we continue the design and continue to get through this, we do anticipate having to do a reevaluation, and specifically, and this is to accommodate the decision of going battery electric charging, either for the facilities that we might need along the corridor. Next slide. Capital cost estimate. So as we all know, our figure is $730 million, and that was based on a 20% design that we did in around July of 2019. And we know since then we've obviously progressed. We did this estimate at 30%, and this was done in early 2021. And I'm sure this is no surprise. Real estate, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide, really took a head. And so we were looking at a change to the project cost of approximately $145 million. So what we did since then, we took two steps. We did a cost reduction analysis that we kind of did over the spring of 2021, and then continued on with the value engineering effort that we do on almost all of our bigger transportation projects. And we completed that over the summer. So with those two efforts, we were able to bring down the cost at a 50% design to about $795 million. And we just completed that in December of 2021. Next slide. Here you will be able to tell you some of the key causes that we found of the increase. So one is the escalation due to the schedule extension to reaccommodate the VDOT widening project. So this in particular had to do with right-of-way acquisition or utility relocations. So you can see here our previous estimate was looking at 20%. We looked at that in 2025, 2027 for some of these activities. But with our updated really schedule and considering the estimate, those two key or escalation factors had to be incorporated. No surprise here that all around the country, we're really seeing a really active real estate market. And that was really the biggest bump that we saw when we relooked at these estimates. We also know that the board took action on switching to battery electric buses and the charging equipment. So we wanted to make that change and make sure we were in line with the board and their policies. And then really just, I guess, global construction materials and markets. So for example, impacts of prevailing wages, we're looking at that, but those are some of the key causes for this increase. Slide 6. So we hit, you may have, hopefully you remember an email from me requesting the request to enter, sorry, in engineering. This is phase 2 for the New Starts or Capital Investment Grant for the Federal Transit Administration program. We just submitted that request January of 2022. And so part of that request includes having the completed environmental document, design plans that we had to turn in, our project management plan, cost estimate. You can see the list of laundry list that here that we had to pertain, and this is all part of what is requested of us as we continue through this project. The other thing we would mention is that the FTA has also given us a program management oversight consultant, or we call them the PMOC. They are the ones that will make the recommendation to the Federal Transit Administration of our readiness for entry or to get into engineering, that second step that we keep referring to for this investment grant. They have assigned KKCS World. So they're, and the good news is they're local. One of them is actually in Arlington based. So, you know, having local connections, kind of knowing the corridor, I think will help us. And so those conversations are regular and ongoing. We do expect to actually officially be accepted into engineering sometime this fall. Next slide. Right-of-way status. So the process is to begin in spring. We are looking to, and I guess let me back up. We're continually working on this, doing behind, you know, work behind the case so that we can kind of amplify this and then hit the ground running when it comes to this. We just told you that we got our environmental approval, which really gives us way to be able to start the process. We are looking to send permission of access letters for property owners if we need to get on site. When we had a meeting in October, if you recall, one of our first or primary goals that we're going to start with is whole parcel acquisitions. And this is due to the complexity of whether it be for relocation assistance or, you know, anything that we need to do with those type of cases and really schedule risk. So information for this can be found on the BRT website. So we have posted, recorded the meeting and all the information, and we continue to take and schedule meetings for any property owners that are interested in the process. And we will also work with the 2 supervisors to give them notifications of when, you know, of what properties we anticipated to start discussions with. Next slide. So public involvement, our last meeting was October of last year. And again, we really focused on the acquisition process, relocation benefits, and the schedule for the community to be aware of. We are working on a branding reveal for the February-March timeframe of this year. And around that same time frame, we're also going to talk about our community charm conversations, which we're actually going to talk more about later this presentation. And that'll, again, start in about springtime. The turn lane analysis, the results that we've been looking at for the past couple of months. We also hope to talk to the community in the springtime. And we are looking to doing community pop-up events. That's a little cold, so that has dropped down, but we do anticipate that to pick up when we're able to do that safely and in the springtime. Slide 9. So just a quick update on our turn lane analysis. As we all know, we've been directed to look at additional or certain intersections for those opportunities to reduce those left and right turn lanes. I think we talked about this before, but you know, the keys here is to really make sure that whatever we do does not impact BRT, or we can safely do this with traffic operations, opportunities to improve that pedestrian and bike safety. And then obviously we are in close coordination with the Virginia Department of Transportation. So you can see our general timeline here at the bottom. I think we've pretty much have almost completed the technical analysis, and then our next big stop will be to brief the county leadership, you guys, on where we are and what our findings are. So we're hoping to do that in the, I'd say, February-March timeframe. After we do that, we're going to have public information meetings. We're expecting, again, that to be in the March-April timeframe. And so we'll do the public outreach, do the presentations, recommendations, with the goal to come back here to the executive committee and to get those final approvals to move forward with whatever the final determination is from the public outreach and then county leadership. Next slide, please. So community charm. Today we're asking for your feedback and maybe even approval on our approach to doing community charm. Just as a reminder, and you're going to see some of this background in case you've forgotten, since it's been a couple of months, where the point of community charm is really to reflect the history, that identity, and the character of the neighborhoods surrounding each station area. We have, the CBCs are named differently, so we want to, and so we understand that, along the corridor, each neighborhood is different, so we want to bring that out. So we'll do that by incorporating community representation. So from artwork, one of our goals here will be to talk to high school or work with high school students and or some of local artists. And then from there, right, integrate the artwork at each station with design parameters that we will be finding and talking about later here, so that there can still be this unified experience as you go through or as you're going through each station. Next slide, please. So just background, we've shared this with you before, and we just wanted to bring this back up as it's gonna come into play later down the line. But back in at the end of 2020 and early 2021, we did do a survey and we asked the community, what do you want to see? Where do you want to see these features? Windscreen, you have the art and plazas, a panel, paving, railing station. You can see here the outcomes from those tallies, or what we found from the communities. The biggest one, or that everyone unanimously voted on, was to have that art displayed at the windscreen design, and so with sculpture paneling coming at second. So on our meeting in April of 2021, we were directed, or with direction from you guys, we really took note and kind of did some more research, as we all agreed that the two locations to display this community charm would be on the windscreen or the sculpture. Next slide. What we also found from the survey results was at each station what people were interested in seeing. So I won't read through all of this, but most of these we agreed was no surprise. At Huntington, they were looking at the history of Richmond Highway, a gateway to Fairfax. Beacon Hill was the historic airport in the view. Gum Springs was the Gum Springs and African American history. At the Woodlawn was the history at Mount Vernon and Woodlawn, and in Fort Belvoir it was military and culture. So I think we all agreed these were nothing different than what we would actually find given other aspects, right, of history and of information we have for the corridor. Next slide, please. So now comes our recommendation. Our recommendation would be that we use that information that we have and where our charm features are going to be, and really integrate that into the windscreen or back screen for the project. After doing some more research with our architects and just from other systems, we felt that the maintenance of it was much easier, and frankly, the funding part. I think back in 2014 or 2015, the Federal Transit Administration stopped participating in artwork. There used to be an art in transit program that was established, and that is no longer in effect. So by us being able, the windscreen is obviously a security and a feature, and from weather and other things that we want. So they'll part of the funding will they'll come into play with that. So we want to play off of that a little bit. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that we couldn't have commissioned sculptures in the plazas if any interested or future parties wanted to take that. And so these red arrows you see are just identifying that location. So where you see the number 2 or that light purple, that arrow, that is when I say windscreen or back screen, that is where essentially this community charm element can be found. And then the number 5 or down here, that's where we would have still an area or a space if people were interested to commission their own sculptures. Next slide, please. So just a little further on those topics, we talked about that at Huntington Metro. People chose history and culture, but really, well, what does that mean? So here are some breakdown of topics that we've heard, and I think we'll use these to actually go out into the community and let them tell us, one, or yes, that's what they meant when they said airport, when they said nature. They were talking about Huntley Meadows Park, for example. So we'll use this, do a survey, and start doing pop-ups and meetings. Next slide. So when we're talking about this program or how we anticipate to do this. We're looking at it in 2 rounds of public meetings. In round 1, we're going to go back and present that information that I just shared with you guys to the community, and first introducing that we are going to do it in the windscreen, and here are the elements or what type of information we want to collect. And that'll be an opportunity, one, to make sure that we're on the right track, that this is what they want to see. And then once that happens, we'll move into part 2 of this, or coordinate with Department of Planning and Development and the History Commission on each of those topics. We're also looking to collaborate with the arts in Fairfax at the appropriate time between those 3, making sure that we have the correct history, that we have the correct facts, so that we can actually integrate that. We have also reached out to local high school departments such as West Potomac, Edison, Mount Vernon, and Bryant to see if the high school kids there are interested in participating, and really the ones to come up with what this looks like. We think it's the best way to get them engaged, because at the end, this is their system. They are our future. So we want to get them involved and incorporate into as much of this as possible. The good news is we did hear some interest back, which we were worried about that no one would reply back. So we did get some interest. And then what will happen is in round 2, we would present the design from each of the high schools for the 9 stations. So again, we're going to figure out if it's, if they want to turn in, like West Potomac wants to do for all the stations, or if they just want to do one design and only pick 3 of the stations, whatever comes in. But the goal here is, again, that it's having, I guess you could say, a competition, so that we can find what really fits best with the community and the visioning of what the expectation is for all of these stations. Sorry. Next slide. So here's just our high level outreach schedule. We're looking to do our first meeting. I think we're looking at February to kind of kick this off and have a meeting to introduce this, followed by during the next spring or summer. We're hoping to do in the ground public events, pop-up events. So we're going, if you remember a couple of years ago, we did what we called our station mini meeting area. So we went to each station area and talked about the project. But we want to do the same thing here in person, obviously looking and considering anything safety and public health conditions that might be around us. But we want to get into the ground, and we're communicating and working with our neighborhood and community services group to make sure we're talking to the right people and at the right locations. In fall, we hope to get those artwork and design submissions from previous work and findings and working with the high schools. And then our goal is for fall of 2022 to have those final round of meetings and kind of have everyone be on the same page. And I don't know if it'll be a vote, but just kind of to see what it is or what we're ending up with in regards to this community charm at each of the stations. So that's our proposed schedule. Next slide. We talked a little bit about this, but and I'll show you an example. But the windscreen design parameters, I won't go through all of these, but when we look at those designs, these are the things we want to consider. And I'll just kind of lead you. One of the more important ones is to make sure they're feasible per engineering and ADA design standards. So we don't want, for example, the design to be completely taken up. We need to allow for natural light. And then so those are a couple of things that we want to make sure that are clear and they're defined. And so this is, again, where we're looking at for the design parameters. The last thing here is this abstract versus traditional artwork design that we're looking at. Let's go to the next slide so you can better see what I mean. We have been looking at different systems throughout the country, and here's what we mean by that. So abstract to the left, you can see is not your typical, as you can see the traditional to your right. Correct. So they'll be kind of like how we did with our stations. They'll take inspiration from I don't know, Huntley Meadows with maybe some greenage and some foliage, as opposed to literally just putting in a tree or something. So this is part of our question to maybe the community to see what do they want to see? What is it more abstract? Is it more traditional? But I mean, in either case, they're very pretty and they're very different when it comes to these. But this is what we mean when we say abstract and traditional. Next slide, please. So our next steps, one of the things we want to ask you today is to take action on our recommendation to use the windscreen. And then hopefully, unless we hear some more feedback, we'll move on with that approach to actually doing this public outreach or this community charm effort. We'll continue coordinating with the local high schools for interest in the design process and submission. And then again, we're already preparing, I guess, whether whatever direction you want us to take, and if we're not on the ball on this one, we still want to do a public meeting, which we hope you would agree with, to kind of kick this off. So before I ask you to take a vote, I guess let's open it up for questions to see if anyone has something else I can explain, or if any insights or comments anyone has.
Hey, Vanessa, John Lynch, I just had a question in terms of the artwork itself or the competition, limiting that to high schools, or if you were considering opening that up to, say, community colleges or even professional artists that might be at the workhouse or other individuals.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess we were really hoping that would be the high schools, the local high schools, that are really close to the corridor, who would be the most interested. And maybe Henry, you can go back to that list. I think there were I named the 4 or 5 local high schools, and really I think it's going to depend on how many of them say yes to us. I think right now we've only gotten a yes from West Potomac. So we might have to come back to this group and say, well, you know, is one good enough, or do you want us to open it back up to a bigger, right, the professional or working with the arts in Fairfax? So I don't have an answer for you yet.
But Vanessa, could I add a thought here? If we could add
Sure.
one other high school,
Okay.
it's not quite on the corridor, but not too far. Hayfield Secondary. You've got
Okay.
Edison here. Could we add Hayfield and see if they might have interest as
Sure.
well? Okay, thank you.
My only caution about Hayfield is that it doesn't draw from any part of the area that the BRT will be flowing down. That's, I think, the reason that Edison was in, and I know West Potomac, Mount Vernon. So that's, if the intent is to try to keep the high schools that are drawing from this area and servicing these areas, that would exclude Hayfield.
Well, I guess I'm just thinking if we're going to represent
if
the
I could
districts.
finish, I'm sorry, if I could finish, I'd like to finish.
Sure.
The larger question is, should we open this up more broadly? Because I think that's a reasonable question, whether it's community college or even, you know, middle school or elementary school. I know our conversations to date at least have been about high schools and the proximity, and I think kind of the value of that. But I don't know that we want to exclude anybody is kind of where I was going to go with that. So even though I think our intent, our purpose in this was to try to connect the schools to the BRT line more directly than they otherwise would be. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to adding community colleges or others. I guess my point would be recognizing that we have 2 magisterial districts that are represented for this access to BRT, thinking about both Lee District and Mount Vernon. Just looking at the schools that are here, we have one that is specifically in Lee. Just thinking out loud, thought it'd seem to be fair or equitable to add one other school, which would be Hayfield.
Vanessa, this is Christine. The other one, no, actually, never mind. I take that back. You do have Bryant listed in here because they've got a very robust art program. They've done some work for our office before. The kids there are great.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah. If you need help connecting with them, or if they're not responding, we can certainly help with that.
Oh, that'd be great. Okay. All right. Yeah, we did the touch base, you know, around, I want to say November, December, to be fair, and that was around the holidays. So we'll definitely do another touch point, but now that we have a contact, Christine, yes, we will definitely take you up on your offer. So I guess what we can do is we can touch base with the team here and tell you, you know, whether we got only one or two, or well, let me ask you this way. So are we saying we want to open it more as of now to some of the colleges and the Arts Fairfax, or do we want to start here, see what we get, and then open it up a little more?
I mean, personally, I would say if we can get the schools in Fairfax, the high schools first, and then open it up if we're having difficulty. Just thinking out loud, if we can't get wider participation from the high schools in Fairfax, then we should certainly consider looking at the community colleges and other elementary or other middle schools as well.
And I would agree with that. I think we've got 5 high schools identified and 9 stations. So I would give the high schools, kind of first shot at this. And if for some reason we don't get enough participation, we could expand to community colleges, community college. But I think with 5 high schools, we probably will get enough participation, and having that linkage between the students and the stations, I think, is a really strong positive message.
Okay. Great. Any more questions or comments?
On the mechanism, on the process for judging, determining, finalizing, is there something that explains what that is? I don't know if I see it in here.
Like choosing, you mean?
The
Final design.
you identified some rough parameters in here of what artists would need to consider to be considered. It doesn't, I didn't see anywhere in here that explains how the process would be assessed or judged or determined as to what gets done and what doesn't get done. I mean, ultimately, this committee probably has some judgment role, but I know, I'll speak for myself at least, I would want others to have weighed in on that long before I had to weigh in on it. So.
Sure. So one is these parameters, right? Making sure that if someone came and said, well, I want to paint it all black, well, that's not going to work because X, Y, and Z. But I think that's where we have the Fairfax Arts Commission take a play to kind of help us and say yes or no, or given their experience, we've heard they're fantastic. And so that coordination, the other side to this is, gosh, I know, can you go to I think it's before the one before this, it kind of just dictates what people or what we should concentrate on per each station. So between those two parameters, I guess this is for the actual design part, but I think the first part is actually, well, what are you going to design, right? So taking inspiration that the fact that at Huntington, you really need to focus on the history or the gateway of Richmond Highway, the fact that at Beacon Hill, there we want to concentrate more on the airport and come up with an artistic representation of that. And we would take both of those things, work with the high schools, have them come up with something. And then if we had more than one type of submittal, I think getting feedback from the Arts of Fairfax to kind of take a look at these and tell us, give us some insight or tell us if they're on the right path on this. And then we would bring those to this team here to actually say yes or no. At least that's how I'm envisioning it. Okay, can you go and then let's go back to our
process a little bit more. I think it's important that be done up front. So, because I, as we all hear, art is in the eye of the beholder, and it's important that there be some sort of group that can help that process. And I again understand ultimately it's this group's decision, but I know for myself, I would love to have that narrowed down to something that people would recognize as quality and originality and just historically appropriate and so on. So I'm sure it's more than just, or it's Fairfax. So that's kind of what the question that I'm trying to bring up.
Right. And so I guess one of the thoughts we thought is let's just pick Huntley Meadows. And so we thought, okay, Huntley Meadows is a topic. So whether we do abstract or something, maybe at some point we'd have a web page talking about Huntley Meadows. So we would never post anything or have information that wasn't hadn't gone through the process of whether it be our Department of Heritage our Division of Heritage Resources, right, with DPD to make sure our facts are correct. So that's part of what we would do to use, but we can get back to you with process. In fact, why don't we write this up for you to kind of tell you details as to what we're looking for, how we're going to do this. We still have some time today. Really, we wanted to make sure, one, that overall in general you were okay with this approach, our recommended approach. But really the big one I think is making sure that we're on the same page, that this charm element is going to be found on the windscreens. I think that would help at least dictate it and really narrow down the parameters. And these parameters you see here are really dictated or back to the windscreen. If you didn't agree with that, then we might have to go back and see other parameters, like the second place was the sculpture design, which probably has something a little different. So the what we're asking for you today is just to concentrate on the fact that we agree that the windscreen is really where we want to focus the charm, and then the process and all of that we can absolutely come back to you and kind of spell it out in a formal, maybe a couple pages telling you detail by detail how we're going to do this. Does that sound reasonable?
It does to me. Mm-hmm.
Perfect, thank you. Good.
I have another question, I guess, if we're ready to move
Yes,
on.
we're still taking questions. Oh, do you want to move on or do you want to still have, I
No,
mean,
I have
I guess.
another question. If
Okay.
it's not on this topic, it would be on a different topic.
Oh, okay. Well, let's Henry, let's go to the next step slide, and if you guys are ready, we can take action on allowing this. I guess the action would be taking staff's recommendation to use the windscreen as the element or place where we're going to do community charm, and just I don't know that we need to take action on the approach that we can work with you on that. So it's really the action for today.
So Vanessa, I'll move that
Thank you.
the executive committee endorse using the windscreens for the community charm.
This is Barbara. I'll second that.
Question on the windscreen. I think I asked this before, and I'm not sure if I'm not certain of the answer, so I'll ask it again just to be more certain.
Sure.
The windscreen, do we see these universally as in essence permanent designs, or will they be of shorter term duration, or will there be some combination of both?
Yes. I think that is still something that we can decide upon. Laura Hegler, I think we have the station architect online, right?
Correct. Laura Jeffers is here as a guest. Yep.
Yes, we are here. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you guys give us some more insight on what you found or what you've been looking at?
It's been our experience, and I'll go first. The experience in the last BRT we did, the back screens, the overall large back screen that your back is to, we had a laminated artwork between the glazing so that you can't really scratch it, can't really mess it up, but you can't necessarily change that. But we did have temporary graphics on the perpendicular windscreen, so it protects you from the weather as you're sitting. It could be to your right or your left as you're sitting. That gave the GRTC an opportunity to change graphics and information provided to the public, whereas the back screen remained static and just basically told you where you were on the alignment. Don, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it might eventually, whenever the what the content is decided upon, that might determine what the media is used. If it's, I can see where if it's a, you know, kind of a characteristic that you're trying to communicate, that maybe if it's the history or something that's a permanent nature, that maybe it wants to be that inner layer approach. But I could see where I could see using both, and then a film that's applied to the glass, or it can be a silk screen, a paint almost, and that could be something that could be changed out. Maybe that's artwork, or something that's, you know, much more temporary in nature.
So Supervisor Strike, I guess to answer your question, that the main screen, and unfortunately I don't have a graphic here, the main screen, the one I guess that's closer, that'll protect you from the weather, or in between, let's see, the road and where you're sitting, that probably we couldn't change, but we are looking to do perpendicular windscreens to help you with the wind, you know, like coming in when you're sitting in, that we possibly could have an opportunity if you wanted, or that was something interesting that we wanted to switch out graphics. The good news here is that it's I think we still have time to decide that. I don't, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but just the station material itself, I can't imagine graphics, unless someone corrects me right here on the stations team, you know, that's not going to change the structural formation or weight that we need to carry. So if that's something that you want to see a little more information on, we can absolutely come back to you and kind of show you what others have done.
I think the options sound good, and that just probably needs to be conveyed as well as part of how the
Okay.
RFP process goes about, so people understand that. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so I did hear two motions. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. We will be moving forward with the windscreen option. Next slide. Okay, so we want to talk. Oops, want to talk a little bit about the Vrt cladding materials that you see. We have I guess you can say, kind of piece this together so give you a better idea of where and what material you see. So the material, or the big area where you're going to see these colors or this material from is going to be the standing seam roof of the roadside cladding. That's just right. So if someone's driving, you're going to be able to see material kind of in front of you. And then we have another type of material, and that's on the transitway side, or where people are actually waiting for their bus. We looked at design criteria for this, and from some pointers we got from you, where we wanted to look at to see if we could do some color. You know, we've been talking about branding, so we wanted to bring some color into this. But aside from that, we want to make sure they have low maintenance, they're durable, they're going to look great, that they have a long life cycle. And really constructability here, right? That these are all key factors when we're looking at this design for the materials. Next slide, please. So here are the options we evaluated: this aluminum composite material, high density fiber cement, and glass fiber reinforced concrete. I won't go into these little details, and pretty much just tell you, we looked at the aluminum composite, because that was the material that was going to give you that shiny color and effect that we were looking for. And these other high density fiber cements and the glass fiber still did some of that color that we were looking for, but it's just not going to give that glossy finish. So you can see we've kind of grayed out this aluminum composite material, because while it gave you the shininess and that glossy effect you were going to get, we were going to lose out on a lot of the rest of it. And what I mean by that is the durability, the warranty, maintenance, a curved surface. If you can imagine, you know, we just had a snowstorm, and having something shiny like your cars, just the snow and the salt and whatever else, it was really just going to make it a higher maintenance needs that we would have for these stations. So We don't think we can deliver on the aluminum, but we are still looking at 2 other materials, which is the high density fiber cement and the glass fiber. So let's go to the next slide so you can kind of get a feel for some of those. So here's a high density fiber cement. You can see there's a color there. We're still looking at what type of colors and talking to manufacturers. And you can see here to the right, there's 3 examples where they use this. The Metro station here in Chile, Australia. And again, just to give you some examples of how other buildings, stations have been able to use this material. When we look at it in context, in the next slide, please. To the glass fiber, reinforced concrete here, you can see what it this one, the big difference in stations, architects, correct me if I'm wrong, we get the more pliable or more formal, more different types of forms. All this material is also used for stations, obviously buildings, but you can see here some of the other things that we can create from this. In regards to weight, to durability, to the maintenance, they are both very similar. So I guess the good news here is that we're giving you an update. We want to continue kind of researching some of these materials, but either one that we go with or choose, one is going to have the same durability, longevity, the weight, so we can continue on our structural design for these, and so which is great, so that we don't slow down the design. The other thing I would say is that we're also getting you samples on it. So I think by next week, we should be able to deliver them to your offices. And I think, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, we only have 1 sample. I mean, we have two samples, but only 1 set. Or did we get 2 sets?
Don sent them out yesterday, so he can clarify.
Yeah, they should have arrived either yesterday or today. But there is a box that the box includes the fiber cement and then 2 samples from the GFRC.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
sounds like we'll have to share, but so I guess our goal would be to give 2 to 3 weeks for each office to kind of look at them and see the difference, look at the color, look at the material, and then from there we can meet again. And once I know we're talking to the manufacturers to see what types of color we can get from these, and we'll move forward. So this is just really an update to tell you where we are with station materials. And the bad news is that we probably can't get the shiny, the glossy, but we do have 2 other options that I think will still get us there when in regards to the expectation that we want for the stations. Next slide. And here's, I'm gonna go quickly. I know it's 2:51. So here's just a couple of renderings. This one is the fiber cement and the actually both of them you can see, get a closer look of what we mean in the colors and kind of like a sense from the feel for the type of material. Let's go to the next slide. And here's one just kind of showing you the background or the back of the station. Next slide. Actually, before we go on, anyone have any questions? Okay. So let's go to our 12-month outlook then. Okay, so we talked about having a branding rollout in the next month or 2. We're still working on our bus propulsion technology review. So this is changing the system to all electric. We are on our way to completing 60% design and station for roadway and stations. We're looking to deliver that in the spring, late spring sometime. Approval to enter engineering, that's expected in the fall. Right-of-way acquisition and the demolition, that is ongoing and really picking up. Our third-party coordination along with utility coordination is ongoing, and we do continue to make progress on both of those. Next slide. All right. So we had a question slide, but with 6 minutes to 7 minutes to spare, any questions on anything? Do we want to go back and review anything?
Hey, Vanessa, John Lynch, just on the turn lane public hearing, was that going to be combined for the entire corridor or just the Fairfax County administered project?
Well, I guess that was my plan.
Okay, no,
I
that's
think-
fine. I think that's the right way to go. I just wanted
Yeah, okay, good. I think our teams, John, so just everyone knows, we've been working very closely on this. And so, you know, like with each other every step of the way. So I just, we might as well do it all at once. And then frankly, also, so when we get questions from the community, both teams are there to be able to answer them. And it's not a, well, VDOT's not here, they can answer it later, right? So that is our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Anything else? All right, well, if not, thank you very much. We have a couple more action items, and I think if we don't see everyone sooner, our next meeting might be around the April timeframe. We have some more information for everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation and your feedback today.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good.